Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We're your hosts and co-founders of FantasyForesight.com, coming to you from the Rambo Fixture Company studios. I'm Ben.
And I'm Jay.
You ready to get rolling, Jay?
You know it. Let's do this.
All right, let's go. Welcome in, everyone. It is Thursday, September 10th. We've got our guy Steve at FF_encyclopedia. And gentlemen, it's time. The 2020 regular season for the NFL is back. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Oh, Ben, we are so close to real, live, professional football. Please. We exchanged some texts earlier today. You were talking about how excited you were. I just can't believe it's real yet. I need to see it. In a few minutes, that's going to be exactly what happens. Steve, I know you're excited, my friend. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Jay, I think I'm right there with you. I think all three of us feel this way. It's been almost like a dream state today because it's hard to believe with everything we've gone through this year that there's going to be NFL football and we're going to watch it tonight. And this might be my favorite podcast of all time just because of that, because it's waiting for us.
Let's go! Woo!
All right, we're gonna jump right into it because we want to be out of here by kickoff time. Before we get started, if this is your first time listening, just know that we're speaking in terms of single QB full PPR redraft by default, and all of our fantasy finishes as well as fantasy points per game calculations are based on full PPR limited to weeks 1 through 16 according to fantasypros.com. And we're changing it up a bit from previous years with our buys and sells series. Tonight we will be covering 10 very interesting week 1 players across the NFL. I'll lay out some general information about each player, tell you whether Total Foresight is buying or selling each player versus their week 1 aggregate projection. And then myself, Jay, and Steve will also tell you whether we buy or sell. And we'll keep track of all of our buys and sells throughout the year and report our progress to maintain accountability. And remember, the intent of this exercise is to provide you with the most accurate and managed expectations as possible for each of these guys. So we're not necessarily telling you to sit a guy even if we sell him. So listen closely. And then we've got our signature bonus segment where Steve covers his complete list of week 1 speculative stashes. So definitely be sure to stick around for that, and definitely check him out at fantasyforesight.com under the Foresight Encyclopedia tab. All right. Let's get going and get out of here before Thursday night football kicks off and DJ massively disappoints. First up, we have got in Total Foresight's first buy of week 1. I mentioned him on our podcast last night, and it's San Francisco 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. The 49ers are at home versus Arizona at 425 on Sunday. Vegas likes San Fran as a 7-point favorite and has the over-under listed at 48. The aggregate projection for Jimmy G is QB 21, an easy buy for me and Total Foresight, because Total Foresight likes him as QB 11. Jimmy G has the best quarterback foresight strength of schedule this week. The 8th ranked offensive line. His opposing defensive line, Arizona, is ranked 18th, and their secondary is ranked 19th. The weather is pretty perfect. 65, partly cloudy, light wind 10 to 20 miles per hour. And like I said, me and Total Foresight are both buying this week. Jimmy G's best 2 games of the seasons last year were weeks 9 and 11 when he finished as QB2 and QB3. You know what those 2 weeks had in common? He played the Arizona Cardinals both times. And I'm sorry, did I miss where Arizona is now a legit defense? No? Okay, then quarterback 21, Jimmy G is the easiest buy of the week for me. Jay, are you buying or selling?
You know what? The fact that Total Foresight has him ranked as the best quarterback foresight strength of schedule tells me all I need to know. That's combining that offense against the defense they're facing, and that's spitting out that ranking. So, yeah, Arizona's defense ranks pretty low in our Total Foresight rankings right now. I mean, I got to admit, I feel a little dirty buying Jimmy G, but, you know, with all the question marks to his pass catchers, I was a big guy buying into Brandon Ayuk. I have a lot of his shares. He probably isn't going to suit up, or at least darn isn't going to be close to 100%. So I went out and scooped up Kendrick Bourne in a lot of leagues, and I am all in on Jimmy G throwing darts to Bourne, Kittle, and the group, whoever's out there. Yeah, man, I'm in, and I'm buying Jimmy G, especially at that QB 21 price tag. That's money in the bank.
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you guys. Like you said, Ben, his best 2 games of the year were against this Arizona Cardinals team last season. And let's not pretend that Jimmy G had all-stars at wide receiver pretty much at any time that he's been in San Francisco. So, but I mean, just to your point, Jay, like whoever's out there, I think he's going to slice him up. So QB, the whole thing is buy or sell QB 11. I'll buy QB 11 all day long. I mean, QB2, QB3 finish last season. Like you said, Ben, this is, when I looked at this list a little bit ago, to me, it was one of the easiest ones on here.
Yeah, because like you said, Steve, you would buy him at QB 11. All he has to do for us to be right is be QB 21. And versus the team that he balled out against 2 times last season, I think those odds are pretty good.
Chalk
and look at us. For number 1, we're all in agreement. NFL's back. It's Christmas Day. It must be the Christmas spirit on Foresight, the podcast.
Right.
Next up, and another buy from Total Foresight, we have Seattle Seahawks running back Chris Carson. The Seattle Seahawks are at Atlanta at 1 p.m. on Sunday. The Seahawks are a 2-point favorite, and Vegas has the over-under at 48.5. The aggregate projection for Chris Carson is RB14, and Total Foresight likes him as RB8. The Seattle running backs have the 14th ranked Foresight strength of schedule, but just the 28th ranked offensive line. However, Atlanta's not a very stout defense either. They have the 22nd ranked defensive line and the 30th ranked secondary. The weather doesn't matter. They're in a dome. And like I said, Total Foresight's buying. And you know what? So am I, because listen, if Atlanta didn't have such an amazing offense, they'd be terrible, just like their defense. As a result, I expect this game to be pretty high scoring, including Seattle moving the ball at will, which should mean a few goal line carries for Chris Carson. And remember, Chris Carson last year was RB10 overall, RB12 in fantasy points per game, 2nd in rushes greater than 20 yards, 3rd in breakaway runs, 6th in evaded tackles, 4th in created yards, and 9th in rushing touchdowns. I can see 2+ touchdowns for him this week easy.
Oh man, here we go. All right. I think I'm going to sell Chris Carson on this RB14 price tag. I don't feel great about that because, look, the guy declared himself 100%, so I got to believe that he is an elite back. I mean, he is a guy when he's healthy who can win you fantasy matchups week to week, but I don't like the game script being in a dome at Atlanta. I expect Atlanta to put up some points, and they're going to move the ball through the air. And I think Seattle's going to have to keep pace, and I think that kind of runs away from their run game. So I'm going to sell Chris Carson finishing as RB14 this week.
Ooh,
the tiebreaker.
So, looking at this list, Jimmy G, easy. Chris Carson, not so much. Jay, I initially was kind of your thought process, right? I'm thinking, well, game script, I could see.
And then he
Chris
listened
Carson,
to facts and he came to his senses.
Well, I was thinking Chris Carson could certainly get phased out of the game a bit, but then, I keep forgetting about, and I don't think we can place enough importance on the fact that Jamal Adams is now in that Seattle secondary. And I do think that will scale back what Atlanta's able to do, at least just a little bit. So
it's a tough one. It's a tough one, man.
It is. I do think that I will sell on him hitting that RB8 mark. But I will.
Steve, it's the RB14. It's the aggregate projection that you have to buy or sell. RB14 is his aggregate projection.
I'm definitely going to buy that then.
Okay.
my bad on that. I totally got that backwards for a second. Yeah. Because I was about to say, if he doesn't hit, I don't think he'll hit RB8, but I think he'll finish as an RB1. So just a low end one. So man, that's going to be a fun one and a tight one to watch.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, sir. We got another running back for the next buy from Total Foresight this week, and we are talking about Pittsburgh Steelers running back James Conner. The Steelers are at the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. Pittsburgh, even on the road, is a 5.5-point favorite with an over-under of 46. The aggregate projection for James Conner this week is RB15, and Total Foresight is buying him to meet or exceed that aggregate projection with a ranking of RB12. The Pittsburgh running backs have the 15th ranked Foresight strength of schedule, the 9th ranked offensive line, and they are facing in the New York Giants just the 26th ranked defensive line and the 27th ranked secondary. And, looking at the Weather Channel app, Monday Night Football in the Meadowlands, it's 80 degrees, partly cloudy, winds 5 to 10 miles per hour, perfect football weather. Total Foresight is a buy. I am a buy. The Giants defense is downright awful. The Steelers have a top 10 O-line, maybe the best defense in football. Big Ben is back, and they're one of the most well-coached teams in the NFL. My biggest concern with James Conner is season-long health, and in week 1, that's simply just not very relevant, and I expect this offense and James Conner to feast on Monday night.
God, I came in, Ben, expecting to sell James Conner at RB15, but you do paint a pretty rosy picture. The Steelers have a great defense. They're going up against a very weak offense. They have a great offensive line. That is a fantastic formula for being able to salt a game away with the run game and controlling the line of scrimmage. So, you made a great point. Season long, he worries me. This game, I'm all in. Let's buy James Conner.
Yeah, I'm buying him, whether it's RB15 or RB12. Total Foresight. I'm buying all the way. Well, it all comes down to it. He's healthy heading into week 1, and I don't think they want to go out and have Ben Roethlisberger throw the ball 40 times anyways. So, all day long, I think, the touchdown on that one, guys.
All right, so let me get this straight. 2 out of 3 guys so far. We have complete consensus.
It's going to end here.
That was the whole reason that I brought this up, because me and Total Foresight are going to be a tag team Lone Ranger pair on this one, and I'm here for it. We're talking about Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski needs some respect put on his name by my co-hosts and counterparts on this podcast. The Bucs are at New Orleans at 4:25 on Sunday. New Orleans is a 3.5-point favorite according to Vegas with an over-under of 48. Remember, like Jay, you pointed out very astutely on our last episode, that home field advantages are very much diminished right now. So going to the Superdome ain't what it used to be. So keep that in mind, number one. Number two, we're talking about an aggregate projection of tight end 9, and Total Foresight likes him as tight end 4. The Tampa Bay pass catchers have the best Foresight strength of schedule this week. And they have the 13th ranked offensive line. New Orleans has the 13th ranked D-line, but the 6th best secondary. Again, we're talking about a dome weather, so that's not going to impact anything. Total Foresight's buying, and so am I. Listen, that Saints defense is tough. I acknowledge that. I respect that. And I may stand alone with Total Foresight on this one, but especially with Mike Evans ouchie or out with a hammy altogether, I plain and simple expect Gronk to be Brady's primary red zone target this week with potential for more. I know about O.J. Howard. I know about Cameron Brate, but number one, they don't excite me. Number two, they're not Gronk. And number three, they don't have near the chemistry with TB12 that Gronk does. And now that he's fully healthy, until I see some diminished version of Gronk with my own eyes, I believe that he's still every bit of the beast that he used to be. And you know who agrees with me? His head coach, Bruce Arians. On August 22nd via rotoworld.com, Arians said, quote, "He looks like he was 5 or 6 years ago before all the injuries. The back surgeries have healed. No similarities at all to 2018 Gronkowski," end quote. I'm calling it now. This is your 2020 comeback player of the year. Let's go, Gronk.
Wow. Talk about some respect both you and Total Foresight are putting on Gronk. Steve, I don't know about you, but I'm a little more hesitant. Yeah, his body may be healthy, and that may be great. The last time I saw him running on the field, he surely did not look comfortable in that football attire. So, I'm concerned that once he takes a shot, all those good feelings will go right out the window. And two, Ben, you mentioned it, man. Even with Mike Evans being out would be the one thing that would give me pause about him being able to finish in the top 9 at the tight end position. But he's got some competition on the team. I don't know how many snaps he's going to be playing on the field yet. I don't know how ingrained he's going to be in the offense. Yes, he has the relationship with Tom Brady, but they have plenty of weapons on that offense. So it's tough for me to sit here and want to buy Gronk at tight end 9 without seeing it first.
So, so looking over this one, guys, I actually think that I'm probably in the camp that if Mike Evans is healthy and plays, I think that actually bodes well for him as far as how the secondary is going to have to defend, Tampa's options. I think it will open things up more, over the middle of the field. And that would give Gronk what I think he needs to do in order to, and I think he could easily do it with a touchdown, exceed tight end 9. Would be getting in the end zone. So I don't want to cop out and say, if Mike Evans plays, I want this or that. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'll go ahead and call my shot and say that I will sell this time this week. I am higher on Gronk than I think a lot of people are. Some people are either pretty high on him or just want nothing to do with him. And I do think, Ben, you made a lot of really good points about him. He'll be more relevant than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for this season.
I could see him having a 3-catch game on like 5 or 6 targets for 60 yards. And like Steve, like you alluded to, it just depends on if he's going to come up with that touchdown grab and make me wrong. If he does, he'll make Ben right. And guys, I don't want to rain on the parade. I know we're all excited about the NFL season starting, but in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, we all want everybody to go out and just light it up and be rolling right off the start, but I feel like there's going to be some kind of ugly games, feeling it out.
To that point, Brady and Gronk have a chemistry and a history that goes way back.
That's true.
And whatever lacking dynamics are between Brady and the rest of that offense, it ain't there with Gronk.
Yeah.
So I think that bodes well for Gronk. And I'll tell you this, Steve, you want to play the if that game with Mike Evans? If Mike Evans plays, Gronk gets at least 1 touchdown. If he sits, he gets at least 2.
You want to put some hair color on that?
No, I'm not that silly like some people that I know, but right. I'm very confident in that. And if Steve wants to make some little fat bet, I'm down.
All right.
I'm just saying the Saints, if they only have Chris Godwin as like a main focus to take away,
that's fine.
I think that they'll have no problem eliminating Gronk in his upside in the red zone.
They got Chris Evans on the bench. He's going to come off and play and ball out.
Gronk is used to being the only focal point on an offense and having the defense primarily focus on him. It's been a while since he's even had a Godwin type. I'm not concerned. I'm telling you, he's getting in the back, man. He's getting in the end zone at least once, maybe twice. We shall see.
Yes, we shall.
Yes, we will. Next up, we've got another Total Foresight buy in Chicago Bears wide receiver. We call him the unicorn on this podcast, Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. They are at Detroit at 1 p.m. on Sunday, and Vegas likes Detroit as a 3-point favorite with the over-under at 42.5. The aggregate projection for A-Rob is wide receiver 16, and Total Foresight is buying that and has him listed at wide receiver 10. The Chicago pass catchers have the 14th ranked Foresight strength of schedule and the 22nd ranked offensive line. However, Detroit has just the 27th ranked D-line and the 14th ranked secondary. That we're talking about another dome, so weather again is not a factor. And just like Total Foresight, I am buying as well. Detroit's D isn't scaring anyone. Mitch Trubisky's he historically balls out versus the Lions, and A-Rob was the wide receiver 7 overall last year and wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game. I'm sorry, what exactly about his situation from last year has gotten worse? None? Then why is his projection a middling wide receiver 2 at wide receiver 16? It's downright disrespectful for a guy who was 9th in percentage of 2019 wide receiver 1 finishes, 8th in consistency from weeks 10 to 16, and 6th in completed air yards. Wide receiver 16 won't even be tough for a guy that like I said, we call the unicorn on this podcast. A-Rob can do it all, and he will do it all this week. Easy buy.
Okay. Oh man, this one's tough. On one hand, I want to call my shot and say that the halftime score of this game is 6-3. But I am going to buy. Well, dude, everybody's injured on Detroit, and yeah, we'll get into that later. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna buy Allen Robinson this week only because Ben loves Mitch Trubisky so much that when this prediction is wrong, I'm going to get to come back on this podcast and yell at Ben and blame it on Mitch.
Teach him something, Steve.
All right. So we did talk about it a little bit last night. I mean, Mitch, he's balled out against Detroit. And one of the biggest things for me is that, hey, Darius Slay is no longer a Detroit Lion. I mean, that defense that was bad got worse. And I know that they spent their third overall draft pick on, was it Jeff Aduka? One of your Ohio State, Okuda, I mean, out of Ohio State. I was going to say one of your boys, Jay. But it'll still be his first game, and that's a tough matchup to draw here, first NFL start. So I just think the targets will be there. Wide receiver 16, especially if he gets in the end zone. I think I have to go ahead and buy that one, guys. I do.
My hesitation, Steve, is both run offenses are a little bit banged up, so that leads to that.
Are you buying or selling? You said you're buying. You sound like you're selling.
I'm buying. I'm just saying, I'm just doing it so I can rub it in your face next week when I'm wrong, all because of Mitch Trubisky.
You are digging a deeper and deeper Mitch Trubisky grave. Me and Steve have both tried to tell you. We both tried. That's all I'm saying. All right. I mean, your love for Nick Foles is blind, and if I had a Super Bowl ring from the man, I'd probably be the same way. I can't even blame you.
And an MVP.
Super Bowl MVP, yes.
Yeah.
No, like I said, I'd be blinded by it too, but he just lost the QB competition to Mitch Trubisky, and Gardner Minshew played better than him last year too. So moving on to the next buy from Total Foresight, we have got LA Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen. The Chargers are at Cincinnati at 4:05 on Sunday, and Vegas likes the Chargers as a 3-point favorite with another over-under at 42.5. The aggregate projection for Keenan Allen is wide receiver 17, and Total Foresight is buying that at wide receiver 11. And the Chargers pass catchers have the 8th ranked Foresight strength of schedule, the 3rd worst ranked offensive line. And surprisingly to me, Cincinnati has the 10th ranked defensive line and just the 17th ranked secondary. I say just because I thought it was going to be a lot worse than that. And then the weather is going to be 83 degrees, 60% chance of rain, scattered thunderstorms in the AM, then pretty cloudy late, 5 to 10 mile an hour wind. Like I said, Total Foresight is buying this aggregate projection of wide receiver 17. I am as well, because last year Keenan Allen was wide receiver 8 overall and wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game, despite having just 5 touchdowns. And you know why? Because he was 8th in targets per game and 7th in consistent. He was the 7th most consistent wide receiver all year. What's changed this year for him as far as that goes? Nothing. He's not some deep ball guy. He's a possession, high volume wide receiver whose targets are still going to be there from Tyrod Taylor. And I don't believe the Chargers will find much difficulty moving the ball against the Bengals. And Keenan Allen will certainly benefit from that. He may not beat it by much, but I am betting he will meet or exceed his wide receiver 17 week 1 aggregate projection.
You know what? I got to say, I completely agree with you on this. I feel like Keenan Allen is one of those forgotten stars that has just slipped through the cracks. And I get it. I understand that what their quarterback situation is, and I'd be down on it too, but he's still a talented guy. There's no more Tyrell Williams. Mike Williams is banged up. Somebody's got to catch balls on that offense, I would think, at some point. And honestly, with Cincinnati, their defense is not good. And that offense, I expect to actually impress. And I think that they know going into the season, this is going to be a dumb thing to say, but they're going to have to outscore the opposing team, which I know you have to do that to win, but they know that they're going to give up points on defense. So they know that they're going to have to score points with their offense and at a high clip. So I think this game could be a little bit more of a higher scoring game than Vegas thinks. And I think that helps Keenan Allen and Eckler for that matter. So yeah, I'm buying Keenan Allen at WR17 this week.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add, guys. I'm definitely a buy at exceeding that wide receiver 17 aggregate projection. And I don't see why he doesn't get 10 targets,
Exactly.
regardless of whether it's a high scoring game or not. He's going to get the targets, and he's Keenan Allen.
Steve, if he doesn't
He'll
hit
turn that into a good
double-digit
finish.
targets, I will be extremely disappointed. That would be one of the biggest surprises of the weekend.
And if you've listened to these podcasts, like as much as we all love and respect each other, we have a very, very enjoyable time disagreeing and yelling at each other. And when the three of us and Total Foresight agree on 4 of 6 of the buys, that gets my attention in a big way. So, that makes me feel confident in the vast majority of our buys. And the most accurate part of Total Foresight in this buy and sell series last year was our sells. And we've got 4 for you coming up. And the first one is going to shock you. It is Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray. Total Foresight is selling him in an aggregate projection of QB8. And the Cardinals are at San Francisco at 425 on Sunday. San Fran is a 7-point favorite with an over under of 48. Total Foresight likes Kyler Murray because of most of that as QB 18. Very different than that QB 8 aggregate projection, partly because Kyler has the 26th ranked Foresight strength of schedule, the 21st ranked offensive line. San Fran has the fourth best defensive line. San Fran has the 10th best secondary. And we already said with Jimmy G, the weather is going to be nice. No issue there. Total Foresight's a sell. And I am too. Now, last year when Kyler played this elite defense in week 9 and 11, he exceeded his current QB8 projection both times. I acknowledge that. I'm aware of that. But now teams have film on Kyler, and I expect there to be an adjustment period for him to develop chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins. And remember, Kyler wasn't the most prolific passer last year. He was just 22nd in completion percentage, 31st in yards per attempt, 24th in touchdown to interception ratio, and 37th in pass touchdowns per attempt. Now, would it surprise me if Kyler lived up to his projections this week in light of what he's done to San Fran last year? No, but I have a pretty strong opinion that Kyler is going to put all his truthers on tilt in a sophomore slump kind of season, and I think that starts week 1. Prove me wrong, Kyler.
Ben, I've never agreed with you more than I do right now. This is amazing. I can't believe it. Look, I'm not a Kyler Murray guy. We all know that. But like you said, teams now have film on Kyler Murray. And not only that, San Francisco's had the whole offseason to prepare for this game and against a division opponent and a guy who played very well against them last year as a rookie. And it's not that they have 1 week to prepare for this guy. Like I said, they had the whole off season. So I think they're going to be ready to go. That defense is locked and loaded. And I think Kyler Murray has a hard time. And I'm going to enjoy everybody freaking out. All the Kyler Murray truthers out there starting to panic about his poor performance week 1. So yeah, I'm selling Kyler Murray.
Yeah, it's funny. Before hopping on here tonight, I took a quick peek just to see how Kyler did do against San Francisco. And Ben, you alluded to it. He was perfectly fine, finished QB 6 and 7. And, so I'm like, well, he's also getting DeAndre Hopkins. But then to all of the points you guys both made, it's a new thing for Kyler to have DeAndre Hopkins. San Francisco has had all offseason to prepare. That defense is mostly intact from last year. We do think that this season, with this COVID-19 offseason, we do think offense will be up this year. But in week 1, defensive units that are returning guys, like I want to avoid those matchups as far as starting a Kyler Murray. So I'm right there with you. I am going to sell a QB8 finish all day long, for sure.
I'm starting to get alarmed. 5 of 7 total consensus.
Oh, this could be shocking the rest of the way.
We did not discuss this whatsoever before the podcast. I signed on maybe 5 minutes before we kicked off. This is all organic, and I did not expect this whatsoever. We'll see if it changes with our last 3 guys, and that starts with Philadelphia Eagles running back Miles Sanders. The Eagles are at Washington on the road at 1 p.m. Sunday, and Philly is a 5.5-point favorite with an over/under of 42.5. It seems like a popular over/under number this week. And Right. And Miles Sanders' aggregate projection is RB8 this week. Total Foresight likes him just a tick behind that at RB10, but that is still a sell. And the Philadelphia running backs have the 8th best Foresight strength to schedule, the 10th ranked offensive line, but Washington has the 3rd best defensive line, but they do also have the 5th worst secondary, so it might seem a little bit more advantageous to pass on them than to run on them, number one. And there's some other points to be made following that. And the weather in Washington is going to be 83 degrees, 20% chance of rain, partly to mostly cloudy, stray shower or thunderstorm possible with 5 to 10 mile an hour winds, so shouldn't be any major factor or impact on the fantasy relevance in that game. And like I said, Total Foresight's selling, and actually so am I. Miles Sanders returned to practice Wednesday, got in another limited session today, but Roto World reported yesterday that head coach Doug Peterson said, quote, "It's a possibility that the Eagles manage Miles' week 1 workload." That's literally all I need to hear to sell him this week at an RB8 aggregate projection. As much as I love Miles overall this season, it's honestly one of those games where I just wish they'd hold him out altogether so I could have so much more confidence in him next week and going forward.
You know, Ben, I may surprise you with this one, but I'm going to sell Miles Sanders as RB8 as well. His health is definitely a concern. He's playing at less than 100% against a divisional opponent that the Eagles always tend to get caught up in these muck-type games with the Washington football team. And I could see that happening again, especially week 1. And like you said, the football team has the 3rd best D-line, now anchored by Chase Young, and he could have a coming out party against the Eagles. So, yeah, I'm going to sell him week 1 and hope for better things to come.
Yeah, I'm a sell too, just because I don't think they have to lean on Miles Sanders. And, it is a shame because, last season, Jay, you probably know this more than anybody, late in the year against Washington, Miles had his best game as a pro. And I think all of us, people that were into drafting Miles Sanders, were salivating at that week 1, opportunity he had in front of him playing the Washington football team.
Right.
But, you can't, when you hear those things coming out of the head coach's mouth, buy a guy at RB8. So yeah, I'm going to sell.
It's now 6 to 8, guys. I think we're in the twilight zone or something. And, it kind of makes sense in this COVID year on such a beautiful day when the NFL's back. So we've got 2 more guys left in this episode for week 1. And it is next up, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Amari Cooper. The Cowboys are on the road at the LA Rams on Sunday Night Football. It should be a lovely game to round out Sunday. And Dallas is a 3-point favorite with an over-under of 51.5. Vegas is looking for some fireworks in this one. The aggregate projection for Amari Cooper is wide receiver 13. Total Foresight is selling that because they have a wide receiver 16 rank on Amari Cooper because partially the Dallas pass catchers have the 6th best Foresight strength of schedule, the 3rd best offensive line. The Rams do have the 8th best defensive line and the 9th best secondary. We're playing in another dome, so that doesn't matter. And just like Total Foresight, I am selling and probably a bit more aggressively because this is another easy one for me. Jalen Ramsey will be shadow covering Amari Cooper, just like he did in week 14 last year when Coop caught 1 pass on 2 targets for 19 yards. Coop will once again be a total non-factor and will come nowhere close to wide receiver 13 as he's projected this week. It's a Gallup, Lamb, Jarwin type of week for the Dallas pass catchers.
I completely agree. You saw the Dallas Cowboys come out week 1 last year, and I believe Michael Gallup was 8 for 8, 8 targets, 8 catches, had a great game. I could see that being the case this week as well for the reasons you just stated, Ben. I wanted to go against the grain and say I'm going to buy Amari Cooper, but I can't do it. I'm selling him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all 2 words, Jalen Ramsey.
Exactly. I know, right?
And even looking back at when they played each other last year, guys, I mean, Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott both just feasted. So they don't need Amari Cooper. He can be a decoy. I know he might have been a little ouchy towards the end of last season, but maybe now he might catch an extra pass. I don't know. But wide receiver 13, you have to just fade that into oblivion. And like you said, I am selling as hard as I can sell.
Yeah, it's not as slight as wide receiver 16. I'm going a little bit farther than that, and I think we all can agree. To round out our buys and sells, just 15, 20 minutes before kickoff, we are in good shape, fellas. We are looking at New York Giants tight end Evan Ingram. The Giants are at home versus the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. Again, like we said with James Conner, Pittsburgh is a 5.5-point favorite with an over-under of 46 points. Evan Ingram is the aggregate projected tight end 5. Total Foresight, cold hard truth, much more realistic, selling that and listing him still at tight end 12. The New York Giants pass catchers have the 26th ranked Foresight strength of schedule this week, the 20th ranked offensive line, and they are going against Pittsburgh that has the best defensive line and the 4th best secondary. The weather is going to be 80 degrees, partly cloudy. Wind is 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thank you, Weather Channel app, this episode. And listen, I know there aren't a ton of effective and healthy pass catchers for the Giants right now, but I don't care. Tight end 5 for Ingram against this Pittsburgh defense when they're also expected to have a consistent, competent offense is just far too optimistic of an aggregate projection for me to buy that this week. I'm a sell all day, and I'm going up against Evan Ingram in our legal record. I'm looking at you, Mike. Evan Ingram's doing nothing for you.
I like the extra incentive there. And I'm going to bring this full circle. You stated it at the top of this episode. We're not advising you to sit somebody. We're not telling you who to start, who to sit. Total Foresight still has him ranked, after everything Ben just said, as tight end 12. That's a top 12 tight end, a starting tight end in your league. Totally fine if you have to put him out there. But as a tight end 5 or better, nah, I got to sell that too. Absolutely. Going up against that defense, yeah, I can't bet on that. No way.
See, fellas, usually if Evan Ingram's healthy and playing, I typically would like him at tight end 5.
Yeah.
But, you got Minka Fitzpatrick just roaming around back there, and I'm sorry. I just can't get behind having faith in him. I mean, maybe he gets knocked out of the game.
I was just gonna say, if he's not careful, he's not gonna make it through this game.
So,
you're right.
Yeah, I'm certainly selling, and yeah, Jay, it's a great reminder to give any listeners or our listeners is, hey, we're not saying don't start him. I mean, you drafted Evan Ingram, you're starting him, but I mean, man, when you're out there trying to put together your DFS lineups, you need to have managed expectations when doing that, and if you're paying for that tight end 5 finish. I'm not, so I don't think any of us are.
Fellas, this could be a flagship week 1 for this podcast. We had total unplanned consensus 80% of the time.
It'll never happen again.
Hey,
we peaked
as
week
long,
1.
I mean, I want accuracy. We strive to help you manage your expectations. You are going to construct the rest of your roster differently, perhaps, if you know that the guy you have in Evan Ingram is a tight end 12 and not a tight end 5. If you think in your mind he's a tight end 5, you might go with some safer wide receiver 3 or something, or a flex like that. You can't afford to do that if you've got him because of everything that we're telling you this week. So I'm really confident going into week 1. We new and improved. We have got a whole new methodology, a whole new series, and we're going to be keeping track of these buys and sells every week. I just saved each one of our individual predictions, we will be reviewing those on Monday night. And now we introduced this series last year, and it got a lot of traction, and it's something that we decided to just keep rolling on with it this year. It's Steve's speculative stash series. He blogs about it every week. He brings you a few or all of them on this podcast every week. And then when we come back with you on Monday night, not only will we review our accuracy in any major storylines of week 1, but we will also be going over your waiver wire targets for week 2. So, but before kickoff, all those waiver wire guys are free. And if you do a little predicting, a little gambling, maybe have a touch of foresight, you might be able to pick the correct speculative stash. So, Steve, who is your list? Who is your list consist of in week 1?
Hey, and I just have to say really quick, if you didn't catch last night's episode, there still is time before we kick off this evening's game. So, two guys that I did have, and we touched on them briefly last night. If you can, add Randall Cobb or Darrell Williams, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. The best thing about adding guys at the end of your bench for tonight's game, if it doesn't work out and you don't want to keep them, you cut them tomorrow morning. Go add somebody else. No harm, no foul. And yeah, Ben, like you mentioned it, this is just something I've always liked doing on my own personal rosters. My entire fantasy career is always having like a burner turn spot at the end of my bench. It's like, why roster a Cole Beasley or something somebody, I'm sorry, that you really aren't ever going to want to start and feel comfortable starting. So it's like, put some upside at the end of your bench and just see what happens, and for free. So, hey, we'll kick it off. And this is more of looking ahead to week 2. And hey, listeners, your league. If you're in a league where you need to look ahead to stream a quarterback. And if you're in a league like that, Teddy Bridgewater, he is only rostered in 24% of leagues. He's playing against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, Carolina's got Pro Football Focus has them ranked as a dead last defense. And obviously, we could see that being a high-scoring game. Teddy Bridgewater has plenty of weapons. If you're doing a quarterback streaming game, you could throw him at the end of your bench. You don't have to worry about using a waiver priority or using any fab. And again, that's your league. If that's going to be somebody you'd actually want to add. Only in a quarterback competitive, like streaming type league. The more exciting guys, though, for all of us is Benny Snell Jr., running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's currently only rostered in 13% of leagues, which is somewhat surprising because we touched on it this evening. James Conner, love him tonight. Might not necessarily love him season long because he hasn't been able to finish seasons. Benny Snell Jr. came into training camp, one of the more pleasant surprises for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 12 pounds lighter, a more lean, chiseled frame. He's a lot quicker, improved his pass catching chops. They just raved about him during training camp in Pittsburgh. And so he's certainly somebody that you could see filling in for an injured James Conner and being able to take on that 3-down role in Pittsburgh. And we all know that can be very valuable. So he's somebody that if James Conner were to go down, you'd be happy that you added him for absolutely nothing before kickoff on Sunday, because I assure you he will be clamored for by everybody as a top waiver ad heading into week 2. So definitely think about picking him up if you can. Probably an even bigger dart throw, but one worth taking if you have a spot to add him. Jerick McKinnon, running back, the San Francisco 49ers, he's only rostered in 13% of leagues. And, hey, there's something to be said for the fact that San Francisco has hung on to this guy for 2 seasons when he hasn't been available to play. He's supposedly healthy, looks good. They're going to find some kind of a role for him. It certainly would be probably in more of a pass-catching aspect, which San Francisco could use that at running back. So if you could stash him, hey, go ahead. Why not? At the end of the day, you could cut bait with him if he only gets 5 or 6 touches and just, move on. We're all going to be looking to make moves after week 1 and 2, especially this season. So again, you kind of want to just take these dart throws now while you can get away with it. And it's really not going to have any kind of an impact negatively to your roster. This is probably my personal favorite just because I like the really sneaky stashes when a guy is like literally just not owned anywhere, but in my mind probably should be. Russell Gage, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons, is currently rostered in 1% of leagues. And with all the wide receivers right now around the NFL going down with shoulder injuries, hamstrings, foot, whatever the case may be, there's probably a lot of you out there that could use wide receiver production in your PPR league. And I think this guy could probably give it to you even in week 1 in a game that could potentially be a high-scoring game playing Seattle. But guys, Russell Gage last season, he was 3rd on the Falcons in red zone targets behind only Austin Hooper and Julio Jones. Additionally, in 9 games last year, he played 9 games substantially, like where he actually got real snaps and targets. In those 9 games, the final 9 games of the season, 6 times he scored double-digit PPR points. That's somebody that you could certainly flex. And had 43 receptions for 402 yards over that period of time. And if you extrapolated out his targets, clocked in around 118 targets for the season. That's valuable. And the reason I also bring him up is he's one of the guys that was raved about in training camp for the Atlanta Falcons. They're saying he's taken huge strides. He's going to be playing in the slot. Matty Ice certainly made Mohamed Sanu fantasy relevant, playing there too in the past. So we all agree that Atlanta is going to throw the ball an outrageous amount in 2020. So definitely he's worth hanging on to. See what see how he's targeted in week one. He could be somebody that even with a healthy Julio and Calvin Ridley, you could use from time to time. And of course, if one of those guys goes down, he'll definitely be a priority add heading into the following week. Moving on down with another wide receiver, and again, a guy that's not really rostered, but at only 2%, Auden Tate, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals. Word is he was like the MVP of their training camp, had a fantastic camp, and he really got the show out in camp because you had all the other wide receivers other than Tyler Boyd, pretty much sidelined. That could happen at times throughout this season. Maybe it happens as early as week one. T. Higgins was out. He's kind of buried on the depth chart right now. John Ross is never healthy. AJ Green, we all want to see him be healthy, but that's going to be a wait and see as we go on throughout the year. And this is a guy that last season had 40 grabs, 575 yards, and a touchdown on 80 targets, being thrust into a role that he wasn't prepared for. So it's good to hear that he's made some strides, and he's somebody, again, you could just throw him at the end of your bench, see what happens.
Steve, I got to say real quick, I do like that pick. I tried to pay closer attention to the Bengals offense this season just because they had so many storylines and the number one draft pick in the league. And there were times when they were scrimmaging during practice where they would put the offense under stressful situations. And more often than not, Joe Burrow relied on Auden Tate over everybody else for first down throws, touchdown grabs. And Auden Tate made some plays, some athletic plays in the end zone. So, good things for him. I don't know if it will translate to the regular season, but like you said, as far as the preseason we got, he looked fantastic.
And that's the thing is, it's cool that we've seen him on a NFL field in a real game action come up with some pretty nice grabs. The dude's 6'5", 227 pounds. That's like a Megatron-like kind of a build. So,
and, without a traditional preseason, those two are on the same page already. We don't know how everybody else is going to gel in live action.
Beautiful point. And one other wide receiver, guys, before I'll move on to the only tight end on my list for the week. Bryan Edwards, wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
His roster share probably has gone up since when I researched this a couple of days ago, but at that time, only 14%. I know since the news has come out that he and Ruggs III will be their starters, but like I said, it was like a couple of days ago, 14%. And guys, they have no wide receivers. They had none last year. That's why they drafted two guys in the first and third rounds. He's another big-bodied, talented wide receiver that, had he been a little healthier in college, he would have went a lot higher in this year's NFL draft. So he's somebody that he should be rostered everywhere.
Steve, I totally agree with you, and I am shocked because I just looked at Yahoo right now because I have him on my bench in our league of record. He's only 23% rostered in Yahoo. Listen to Steve, people. Good God. Go get Bryan Edwards.
So even with that announcement that he will be their starter, he's only up to 23%. Amazing.
Wow. That's astounding.
So yeah, for anybody, for all we know, he'll get 8-9 targets week one. And any wide receiver getting that kind of target.
I'm sorry to interrupt and to make it about me, but other people could be in this type of situation, and that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I have Kenny Galladay as my wide receiver 1. Devontae Parker is my wide receiver 2. And before, just a couple of days ago, I was concerned about my wide receiver 3, AJ Green, as well. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that I bench one of those iffy guys to play first-time ever rookie Bryan Edwards because he's at Carolina, and Steve's making all the good points that he's making. I cannot believe this guy is still 23% rostered in Yahoo. That's insane to me.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that's going to change a lot after week 1.
Yeah.
So, final guy on my list of stashes this week. And again, not again, but I should mention these are all people that are rostered 30% or less at the time that I looked this up. I like to choose a low number just because if you all are tuning in and listening to this or watching it live, you're serious fantasy football players and you're really passionate about it. So if I'm giving you people that are 55, 60% rostered, you're going to go into your competitive leagues you're in. You're not going to find them anywhere at any time. So it's almost like, kind of what's the point? You can get that anywhere else.
Absolutely. Our bar is raised way higher than that on this podcast. We understand that the pickings are slim in any decent league out there.
That's why I love those Russell Gages and Auden Tates, just because you can literally.
Brian Edwards, apparently. Ugh. Good God, 23%.
But guys, Irv Smith Jr., tight end of the Minnesota Vikings, rostered in 16% of leagues. He actually had a pretty decent rookie season, considering the fact they didn't really throw the ball much in Minnesota. And, word out of Vikings camp is that Justin Jefferson has been struggling to catch on. He's currently behind. Is it Olabisi Johnson?
Yeah.
Is there, everyone projected Jefferson to be that wide receiver too and just walk into 100 targets. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Meanwhile, Irv Smith Jr., on the other hand, has taken a significant step from his rookie year in training camp, and they're moving him around in the formation. They know what he can be as a wide receiver, so he could very well end up, and it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if he ended up being number 2 on that team in targets. And for a tight end, that's extremely valuable. So he's somebody that, and again, a lot of these stashes also come down to where are you weak on your roster? What do you need to help you win moving forward? I'll stash a guy at that position and see, hey, can this guy ascend and become my starter weekly at the tight end position? And Irv Smith Jr. is definitely a guy that I think throw him at the end of your bench, see how he and Cousins hook up in week 1. If it turns out that the dude gets 6 to 8 targets, which at tight end is extremely valuable, then you are so happy that you picked him up because he's going to be one of the highest added tight ends heading into week 2. So
awesome, man. That's a great list of speculative stashes, man. I am surprised at, obviously a Brian Edwards, but I'm surprised that it's not common knowledge about some of these guys, and the percent rostered proves that it's not, Steve. So it's great information. And if you prefer to read up a little bit more about it, definitely go to fantasyforesight.com and check out Steve's great work every week under the Foresight Encyclopedia tab. And guess what, guys? Kickoff is about to start. Everybody enjoy this amazing game. The NFL is back, and then we're going to be back with you on Monday night to review everything week 1 and give you the waiver wire targets for week 2. Can't wait.
Enjoy it, and hey, good luck to everyone. Let's just not see a lot of injuries.
No injuries, great football. Let's roll 2020.
Amen.
Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Foresight